Hi friends, my name is Steven and this is my channel Signal Up Productions where I make videos all about trains. In this video series I'm going to show you how I designed and built my HO scale UP St. Marshall sub layout. This first video I'll go into detail of how and why I designed the layout the way I did. In later videos I'll show you the methods I used for the bench work, electrical, track work, scenery structures, signals, details, operations, and all sorts of good stuff. So let's not waste any more time and let's get started. The NMRA website is a great resource for all model railroaders, regardless of skill level, and it's a great organization to join and get involved in. Now, this video is not sponsored by the NMRA, but I do use their website a lot because it's got a lot of that great information I'm talking about. I am a member, and I would encourage you to consider joining. There's a lot of great opportunities to being a part of such a wonderful organization. Definitely, if you can find a local division that's active, you can get involved there and have all sorts of friendships that you can create and opportunities and activities you can get involved in that you may otherwise not be able to do. Now, if we go to their website, and since this video I'm talking about the track planning aspect of my UP St. Marshall sub, if you're new to track planning, maybe you come to their website under education and there's the beginner's guide, and then you can click on layout planning, and there's a great article in here to help you kind of work through what to expect when planning your model railroad. Now, I've been working on the track plan for my St. Marshall sub layout for a long time because I knew there are certain elements that I wanted and also certain elements that I knew I could live without. And so whenever I started designing the layout, I focused on just what I knew I wanted. Those were the wants tos and the gots tos that you might remember from my introduction video for the layout. And once I was able to narrow that list down to what I knew the minimum I could be happy with, then I was able to get started on the layout planning. Now, there's a lot of great questions in this article that you should ask yourself, and you really want to be honest with the answers. Be realistic. Building layout, model railroading requires some time, skill, and some money, and for layout building, space. And these are realities that you really have to come to terms with. You know, if you want this gigantic, big, huge layout, but you've never laid track in your life, or you've never soldered wires, feeder wires to a rail joiner, or anything like that, or maybe you're on a limited budget. These are realities that you have to accept and consider when dreaming about your big layout, because what you don't want to do is end up with analysis paralysis, where you overthink something to the point where now you are too worried about getting started in it. And you also don't want to end up becoming, you may have heard before the term armchair model railroader, somebody that spends all their time dreaming and designing, but then they failed to ever actually act on those dreams or designs. So I didn't want to fall into those categories. I got started planning the layout, and I knew that I needed to get a layout built, even if I didn't have everything that I wanted, but I wanted to at least get the main core design parameters included in my layout plan so that I could be content with what I was building and not feel like I was just throwing money and time away on it. So all of these great points are in this article, goals and resources, what kind of layout are you wanting? I knew that for me, I wanted a basic design layout. I don't personally care for double deck layouts, and I do like linear layouts where the train only travels through a scene one time. And see, I'm able to develop this idea of what I like and don't like because of the years that I've been involved in the hobby. Not only have I built a lot of layouts, modules, and dioramas myself, but I've also had the opportunity to visit other people's layouts and ask them questions. Why did they do this? Why did they not do this? And then I was able to formulate my own idea, my own subjective opinion on what I liked and what I didn't like. And everybody's different. What you like is what you like, and what I like is what I like. And so I don't really care for the layout designs where trains are looping around multiple times. I also don't really like designs that include multiple levels. So I wanted something single level uh, that was high enough off the ground so that I didn't have to bend over to appreciate the detail. that also included and incorporated specific elements that I really like above all else. For instance, a small yard that allowed me to sort cars for local industries, and that yard also I wanted to have a separate switch lead, so the yard switcher could be switching separate of the main line. I wanted a continuous running main line so that I could have maybe a new locomotive that I just bought. I want to maybe break it in, or maybe I want to just appreciate from a rail fan's perspective some of the different train equipment that I have to just loop around the layout while I'm switching the yard, or maybe I'm at the workbench working on a project. And so I wanted a continuous running loop, but that it could operate as though it was point to point. A train could come out of the yard, go to an industry, and then back to the yard or something like that. I don't necessarily have to go in the full circle. And I also knew that the small size of this layout wasn't going to be large enough to have large formal operating sessions with lots of friends coming over. So I really only designed it for just me to run, where I could be switching the yard while a train's running on the main line. But there is enough operating potential that one or two friends could come over and do a little bit of switching maneuvers without necessarily getting in each other's way. But that'd probably be all I could accommodate. I took that into consideration when I was analyzing the space that I had, whether or not I wanted to try and squeeze more space out of my basement than what was really available, just to accommodate more friends to come over. That wasn't really something I needed to consider. Time and money was also another financial or another aspect that I had to consider. By having a smaller layout, I was able to concentrate more of my energy and resources on making what I had really, really great versus a large layout where maybe my time and money could be spread too thin, and then I end up cutting corners. So I didn't want that. And it was going to take a little bit of time as my family grows before any of the bedrooms in the house became available. So I could have waited until my kids grow up to be adults and then build a layout. But then that's a lot of time wasted that I could have been enjoying something better than nothing. So that's why I found a space in my basement. There was, at the time, a lot of our storage was down there, so I had to get my wife down there, and we purged a lot of items so that the space was available to build the layout. And what I ended up with was an area 5.5 feet wide by 15 feet long. That gave me just enough room to have the layout, a small oval up in the corner of the basement that still allowed access to the basement without requiring any kind of duck under to get around the layout, so that if my family needed to get to the basement for some reason. I also have had the opportunity to build a large number of layouts and dioramas and stuff in the past, so I've already been able to develop the skills that are necessary for building layout: electrical, carpentry, scenery, things of that nature. So I didn't need to design the layout around the idea of having friends come over to help me in areas where maybe I didn't have that particular skill set. So the layout designed as it is, I'm able to construct it completely myself, start to finish, with the exception, as you'll see in the benchwork video that I have pending, one of the sections was larger than I could handle by myself, and thankfully my wife came down and helped me stand that up. I would have liked to have a larger layout, and maybe someday I will, but what I've got so far is definitely something that has me content. It has just enough elements to be satisfying and engaging and not get boring. Now, the layout is designed to move if I need it to, but I wouldn't call it a portable layout. The benchwork is constructed in a way that they're sections that are joined together, and same with the track. The track is gapped at the section ends. So if I were to ever get a bigger space available, then the layout could move with me, or I could just sell it to somebody else and they could have a turnkey layout. Then I could turn my focus on a brand new layout. Now, what I used for designing the layout, I explored different track planning softwares and tried the samples of each of them, and I ended up going with AnyRail, I found it to be the most intuitive, and given the space that I had, I was able to draw out the entire layout, um, section for section, and know exactly what would fit and how much space each track would have, to be able to know, well, how many cars will this industry be able to fit, and is that really sufficient? Um, Now, one area that I wasn't exactly sure how much I could fit in to the space, and I wanted a really accurate measurement, was the yard area. And so that was easy to design in the AnyRail because I could try out both like Walther's Code 83. Those are the brand of switches that I'm using. And I could try out both the number 6 and the number 8 turnouts, and see what actually fit the best and what used the space the best. So I was able to bring out my turnouts, the number 6 turnouts, and kind of play around with different ladder designs. I actually tried both a simple ladder and a compound ladder to see not only what worked the best, but what looked the best. Some of the layouts, some of the track plans that I examined, a lot of times they're trying to represent a large classification yard, and therefore you would find a compound ladder or double slip switches, things of that nature in those larger, more complex yards. But my layout's based on more of a small town Midwest region, and whenever I would go to Google Maps, and I would look at different yards around here. For instance, one that I found is in Salem, Illinois, Union Pacific Yard, and it's very simple in design. And there's just a very simple ladder right here that goes into a couple of uh, body tracks that the yard crew uses to just sort and block different cars for local industries. And that's really what I was trying to represent, just a small town yard, not necessarily a huge classification yard. So with the simple ladder designed, then I could actually put in different sections of track and see, exactly how much space I was going to have in each track. Then I was able to do the math and decide how many cars each track could hold, how many cars the whole yard could hold as total, and if that would really be enough for the design or for the operation that I had envisioned for the layout. Now, if we go into my file that I actually used to do the layout here, let me find the file. Let's see, recent design. Let's open. If we go here to, where is it? There it is, St. Marshall 7. And there we see the actual layout that I ended up with, and the different track pieces and line pieces. I'm not going to go into great detail how to use the software. That may be a future video because this is more just focused on my track plan. But elements that I knew that I wanted. I wanted a yard. I got that. I wanted at least a staging track to represent the rest of the world, so I got that right here. It is a stub end staging track, which means whenever the operation starts, the manifest train comes out engine first, but whenever it leaves the yard, it comes out. It'll actually have to shove back in. I understand that's not exactly prototypical, but you know what? It compromises. I wanted a couple of industries. Specifically, I wanted a grain elevator, and I like tank cars, and so I'm representing a tank car industry with Brenntag. Brenntag is a company that mixes chemicals. One that I knew off the top of my head is over here in East St. Louis. See if I can find it on the map. Right there. Yeah. And you can actually see that from the interstate. It's just a very simple design, a couple of stub end tracks, and then they've got the unloading platforms right where the cars would get spotted. If I understand the operation correctly, they receive bulk chemicals, different blends and different grades, and then they blend them inside the building, and then they put them in IBC totes, the big plastic 500-gallon totes, for shipment to area manufacturers for their manufacturing processes. So that was, kind of an easy industry to model because it just really required just a stub end track with some tank car loading or unloading platforms. And so I wanted tank cars represented. I got that here. And I wasn't sure. I knew I could fit a third spur in, but I wasn't sure what industry to make it. You know, a lot of times guys will use team tracks. Team tracks seems to be really popular. That's not a very common industry in modern railroading. Where they are employed, they're called transloads. And typically they're transloading bulk commodities such as plastic pellets or maybe liquid asphalt or propane, something like that. Sometimes center beam flat cars for loads. But you wouldn't generally see at a transload, not a modern transload, not especially not a very small one like this. You wouldn't generally see auto racks being loaded or unloaded, especially not a single auto rack. You might see them at a large auto rack facility, but it's hard to suggest something that large of scale in such a small track here that only could fit like 3 cars. So I ultimately decided on an interchange track. There's a local railroad, a short line railroad not too far away from me, and that's really one of their main customers is a car repair facility at the end of their line. And so on their interchange track, which looks almost just like this, um, just about any car could be spotted on there. Grain cars and depressed center flat cars, auto racks, box cars, really anything, because they all go out there to that car repair facility. So I thought, well, the interchange would make sense that I could spot or pick up any kind of car from that track because it could be going to my short line customer. So that was what I did there. I also wanted a train station depot so I could run an Amtrak or a Metro commuter train and have them somewhere to stop. Lastly, the design consideration I had to consider was the other stub end track here for a whole train. What I'm calling this is my unit train track. And I like unit trains. I really like intermodal trains and I like coal trains. I really like coal trains. And I had considered back and forth, and I was undecided for a long time while studying this plan whether or not to include a coal flood loader here and loading coal trains, or if I wanted intermodal. And ultimately, I decided the intermodal because I also like semi-trailers, and I have a large collection of HO scale semi-trailers, and I wanted somewhere to display those. So by having the intermodal facility, then I get both. I get unit train, and I get somewhere to display my semi-trailers. I also hope to someday use this layout to earn a couple of the Master Model Railroader certificates from the NMRA. That's a journey that a person can take where they um, obtain certain skill levels throughout the process and then demonstrate their proficiency in those skill levels so they can earn different certificates for categories such as electrical or trying to think of the other ones, motive power, scenery, civil engineering, things of that nature. And uh, the stipulations in these categories, what you have to achieve, if you read over them, you could actually go to the NMRA's website, and they've got a whole article on the master, what is it called, the achievement program. We go here to right here, achievement program, and then you've got all of the different categories that you can look at, and then what the criteria is for each category. And as I was studying the criteria for some of these, like civil engineering, electrical engineering, and chief dispatcher, I tried to incorporate some of those factors, some of those elements into the layout. And so that's why I actually included the runaround track here in the yard. I had originally the track was two tracks. The yard was 2 tracks. But I added the third track to comply with the the list in the Master Model Railroader Achievement Program. Also included the turntable. There's no roundhouse because a lot of modern, especially Union Pacific modern yards, if they do include a turntable, it's simply for servicing to spin a locomotive to get it facing the right direction, not necessarily for like steam engines and servicing like that. So there's no actual roundhouse building, but there's a couple of service tracks that the engine team, service team can use to do some running repairs. There's also an engine service track for fueling and sand over here. And because I'm a modern railroad, uh, I don't have a caboose track. Instead, I have a shoving platform track right here. So these are design elements that I included in my layout simply to comply with the standards of those different certificates that I hope to earn someday. I also really like river scenes, so I included that here, the Green River. And then this is kind of a small little village. There's a church and a little residence here in a gravel dirt road. That's actually what I've been working on this week, this scene. And a town, I also wanted a town. I like having kind of a downtown scene with businesses and a stoplight and a road that was busy enough to need crossing lights and crossing gates and stuff like that. So that's here as well. And the rest of the area will just be filled in with generic scenery. That way I'm not over cluttering the layout with too many things that make it just difficult to appreciate the individual scenes because it was just, too packed full. I've already had people tell me, oh, I could have fit, so many more switching tracks in here and have this really complex, like used a triple track or a three-way switch or a double slip switch here and got a lot more switching in. Okay, well, switching isn't operations. It's one aspect of operations, but operations is the bigger picture of trains interacting with the layout they're running on. So you can get that with mainline trains just running and meeting a siding, or switching your industries or yard switching. It could be anything. Now, some of the inspiration I've got over the years are just the different railfan trips that I've taken around the country. And whenever I go and railfan these different areas, I take pictures and I most importantly make memories of just how I felt in that particular location watching these trains go through these different scenes. And so those are the different things I'm trying to include in my layout. Representations of memories that I've experienced in the past. And therefore, I'm primarily modeling what I've seen, just condensing it down to, a 5.5 by 15-foot space. But, I've seen stub end yards like this with short switch leads. I've seen, industries that are just very simple stub end tracks. I've seen, primarily flat mainline track going over a nice little gentle river, or a small turntable that just has a few stub end tracks where maybe a couple of local diesel locomotives are sitting. These are all things I've seen, and so I'm just trying to incorporate past memories into my current track plan. And maybe consider that whenever you're planning your layout. What do you hope to recreate? Maybe you've seen trains interact a certain way with their surroundings, and you want to recreate that in your layout. I don't know what you've seen or not seen. So different things that I like. I like Rochelle. Of course, I do like double track main lines, but I didn't want just a spaghetti bowl track plan, so I didn't have a double track main line. But if you look up here at the Global 3 yard, it's just a very simple intermodal yard. Several tracks that come in, pull right in, and then they get unloaded by my jack cranes, and then the trains go right on out, which is essentially what I'm recreating here. The train comes in and it will get loaded or unloaded with a my jack crane and then head on back out again. So I use Google Earth a lot just to look at different yard designs and track designs. Whenever you get to somewhere that you want to see, maybe how that particular industry is set out, a lot of times you can go to Street View and then you can see some of it from the ground level, and you can kind of spin the camera around and see, oh, that track is curves into that industry, and it's just a very not well kept track. Lots of grass growing up in the middle, ties are missing, or things like that. So use Google Earth. If you have a specific area you're modeling for sure, then you could go right there and see, how that town might be laid out with how the Y comes into this branch line. So if you're not modeling a specific area, then you have to decide if you're wanting to, just have trains running, or if you want to have point-to-point operation. And unfortunately, you're the only one that can really answer that. So I suggest if you're in that position, you visit a lot of layouts and you ask lots of questions. Then you can develop an idea of what you like and what you don't like. So whenever it comes time to actually design your layout, you're able to incorporate those things that you like, or also avoid incorporating those things that you don't like. One thing that I knew that I didn't like was having a really confined space inside the layout to operate from. So I I compromised and had a narrower section of layout here, only 18 inches wide, which is pretty narrow, only to give myself 2.5 feet inside the pitch, as I call it, versus maybe if I only had 2 feet here, I could have had a little bit wider yard area and had more track space or maybe industry space over here on this section. But I already knew that I didn't like really confined spaces, so I wanted that as wide as possible. And these are opinions that you're going to have to develop on your own. I'm just telling you what I did. Now, lastly, if you're modeling a specific railroad or even a specific subdivision, sometimes at train shows or different places on the internet, you might be able to find, or maybe even eBay, obsolete railroad paperwork, things like timetables and track charts and things like that. I happened to come across this on eBay a while back and scanned it in my computer so I'd have it in reference for later time. And a lot of times you'll get track diagrams in these employee timetables, like even right here for Chicago Heights. There's the main line as it comes down, but then all of the different industries that they serve and different yard track numbers here. You could see that if we zoom that in, you can actually see the different track numbers. This is information you can use in designing your layout. Also, maybe if you're modeling a specific subdivision, you can see how they stagger their passing sidings along the way, how far they space them. You wouldn't necessarily always go from one passing siding to the next. There's, even right here, there's 10 miles of track between Pana and Chilman, where you've got just mainline running out in the middle of nowhere. There's not industries, there's not yards, there's just track running through scenery. So you can incorporate aspects of that nature into your track plan. So use that kind of information in your track planning efforts. Railfan, if you're modeling a specific prototype, be sure in Railfan. Go to NMRA's website so you can get some information there on track planning fundamentals. Google Earth, use your street view to observe different ground level things and then zoom in on satellite view to the different yards if you're wanting a yard design. Maybe you're wanting to design a hump yard and you want to see how the receiving and departure tracks are all laid out, or engine facility or car facility or something like that. All the different elements of real railroading, and your goal is to try to fit those into the space that you have without cramming it in and ending up with too much in a space that then you get discouraged because it's just not working the way you want. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Less is more. You might actually be surprised how happy you are with a more simple layout rather than just tons of what I call spaghetti bowl track, where it just goes every which way, and you're using space-saving turnout fixtures such as three-way turnouts or double slit switches where they really wouldn't be appropriate in the prototype. So you want to avoid maybe using those. With your design, you want to try and have the radius as wide as possible. Even if your trains will run on a 24-inch radius, you want to go as big as possible. A, they look better, and B, they're going to perform more dependably, more reliably as they operate on your layout. Same with turnouts. You might want to squeeze in more industry, and you could do that if you use a number 6, but maybe there's places where a number 10 or a number 8 would be fine too, and that's going to just enhance the reliability of your trains operating on the layout. So bigger is better when it comes to turnouts and curve radius. Less is more when you're trying to decide how many industries or yard tracks to fit in a given space. That's it. That's all I've got for this video. Hopefully it helped you out. Hopefully it gave you some insight as to how I came to the track plan I've got for my layout. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave those down below. And check out this playlist as I finish up the other videos on the bench work and the track work, which should be coming soon. And then you can see the different progress that I've made on the layout. Be sure to check out the website, signaluprr.com. And then also follow me on Instagram to see all of my railroad photography that I add there. And we'll check you guys out on the next video. Thanks for watching.